Actual home values of fictional houses we just learned in 2022. Number 10 John Matrix's cabin Commando. Location Mt. Baldy, CA. Estimated value in 2022 $1,400,000. This 1980s action romp was mostly shot in and around Los Angeles, even the scenes in Val Verde and the island compound of the film's climax. Val Verde is a fictional country used as a plot device by writer and producer Stephen E. D'Souza for multiple films. Whenever a vaguely central South American country was necessary for the story, D'Souza would use Val Verde in place of a real location, so as not to ruffle any feathers. Arnold Schwarzenegger's 1980s classic Predator is also supposed to have taken place there. The scenic rural cabin where John and Jenny Matrix live is in Mt. Baldy, CA. Built in 1981, the three-bedroom abode sits on a sizable 9.36-acre lot, so you'd need a bank balance bigger than Matrix's bulging biceps to buy it. The garden and mansion where the final shootout takes place were actually in Beverly Hills, only about a 90-minute drive away from the cabin in real life. Number 9 Funny Residence Doug. Location Bluffington based on Richmond, Virginia. Value $250,000. The fictional town of Bluffington doesn't mention a specific location, but is loosely modeled after creator Jim Jenkins's hometown of Richmond, Virginia. Bluffington is very much a company town in the pocket of the wealthy Bluff family. It probably has a pretty dark past, depending on how closely American history in Doug's world follows real life. There's also something quite unsettling about Bud Dink when you revisit the show as an adult and the little dual income no kids reference went completely over your head as a child. Race doesn't seem to apply in Doug's world, given the wide array of colors used for characters, but the purple characters do seem to be better off than most. Surprisingly, a light-hearted children's cartoon doesn't actually get into the minutiae of its world's social and political dynamics. Using Bluffington as a proxy for Richmond, the funny residents shouldn't break the bank even in today's red-hot housing market. A modest three-bedroom Cape Cod on a sizable lot in that neck of the woods shouldn't be too far north of $250,000. Number 8 The Skypad Apartments, The Jetsons. Location Orbit City. Value $6 million 2062 price. There are some bleak theories about why the futuristic Jetson family lives so far above the Earth's surface. Stories that range from a wasteland caused by nuclear war. The show debuted in the same era as the Cuban Missile Crisis to environmental collapse. Or even a zombie apocalypse are certainly entertaining, but they're all just plain wrong. We do, in fact, see the Earth's surface in the show, as early as the 7th episode, to be precise. The same socio-economic conditions that plague our present all seem to be apparent in the Jetsons' time, too. Despite the future having apparently automated every single menial job out there, and having found a way to mine the endless riches of asteroids, there are still homeless people living on the Earth's surface. George Jetson's sinecure white-collar job above the surface is far removed from those problems. The family has a plush, spacious home in the Skypad Apartments building in Orbit City. The buildings aren't actually as high up as you might think, as one episode reveals. No building is allowed to be more than 2,200 feet off the ground. The real world's tallest building is actually higher than that. The show is supposed to take place in 2062, meaning we're closer to that era than when the show debuted back in 1962. We can safely assume that Orbit City is a desirable and affluent area in the future and will be priced accordingly. Because it's clearly been influenced by Seattle's Space Needle, we'll use higher-end apartments in the Emerald City as a rough guide. Inflation is prone to fluctuations, but if we imagine a steady 3.5% annually for the next 40 years, a $2062 would be worth $4 in today's terms. So George Jetson would probably be forking out about $6 million for his very high-rise apartment in his own time, or about $1,500,000 today. Number 7. The Fresh Prince mansion. $10,594,600. From 1990 to 1996, guests saw the Bel Air house that represented a new and rich life for Will Smith on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Ironically, the colonial neoclassical mansion isn't even in the Bel Air neighborhood of Los Angeles, but in nearby posh Brentwood 251N. Bristol Avenue, to be exact. You can swing by and check it out whenever you're in the neighborhood, but don't expect Jeffrey to answer the door. Number 6. The Roseanne House. $210,200. Representing working-class America, the house where the Connors lived on Roseanne was practically the only place we ever saw them. Located at 619 Runnymede Avenue. In Evansville, Indiana, the place is still standing and was on the market in 2013. Number 531 Spooner Street, Family Guy. Show location Quahog Fictional, Re. Value in 2022 $300,000 minus $400,000. The Griffins were described as a lower middle-class Irish Catholic family in a news segment in an early episode. Although Lois comes from a wealthy family, Peter's lineage is far less affluent. The family's financial situation varies wildly over the course of the show, but they are generally shown to be barely keeping afloat. The show is set in a fictional Rhode Island town. Its coastal location would make either Providence or Cranston the nearest real-life equivalents. An equivalent 4-bedroom Cape Cod would fetch somewhere north of $300,000 in Cranston. One of the more affordable properties on this list, it would still be quite a reach for a brewery worker. And a part-time music teacher to cover the mortgage, especially with 3 children. Number 484 Rainey Street, King of the Hill. Show location Arlen Fictional, TX. Value in 2022 $170,000 minus $200,000. A modest 3-bedroom ranch in a fictional small town in Texas makes this animated home one of the most realistic items featured here. The location and size of Arlen are ambiguous and contradictory. One episode suggests a population of 145,300, in another it's 1,454, and the location is similarly unclear. A town sign suggests Arlen is 96 miles from Dallas, while the different zip codes place it within spitting distance of Houston or even in Oklahoma. Arlen could conceivably be anywhere within the vicinity of Dallas, though Richardson has been suggested as the main source of inspiration. Using Richardson as an example, a similar single-family home would still just about be within the means of a frugal propane salesman and substitute teacher. Number 3 Rachel and Monica's apartment in Friends. Location 90 Bedford Street. Description of the apartment. Though the address seen in a wedding invitation would place the apartment in Brooklyn, the building used for the exterior shots is in Manhattan's Greenwich Village. The 2-bedroom, loft-style apartment features open living space and a balcony. The eclectic decor and warm color scheme were the work of set decorator Greg Grande, who wanted to give the apartment a homey feel. The ever-changing furniture was secured from local swap meets and the forgotten depths of the Warner Brothers. Prop house in L.A. What they would have paid at the time the show began, in 1994, Greenwich Village was one of the hottest rental markets in the city. A 2-bedroom apartment would have been in the region of $3,000 a month. However, Monica inherited the apartment from her grandmother, and Monica's rent throughout the duration of Friends was only $200 a month since it was protected by rent control since the 1940s. It's possible, however, that Monica was doing this illegally due to rules about who can take over a rent-controlled apartment. Today's value $7,000. Can they afford it? In the 90s, The apartment was way beyond the means of a line cook and a waitress. Today it's an even more ludicrous prospect. But because of Monica's Nana and Monica possibly breaking some rules, the duo was able to live basically for free in one of the most expensive cities in the world. Number 2, Wayne Manor, Batman, 1960s TV series. $14,866,400. Holy Real Estate Bubble, Batman. The 10-bedroom, 6-bathroom Pasadena CA mansion featured in the campy 1960s TV series, always referred to as stately, is a snip at just under $15 million. Unfortunately, Alfred the butler no longer works there. Number 1, 742 Evergreen Terrace, The Simpsons. Location Springfield, Oregon. Value $400,000. The Simpsons have been on the air so long that the family's finances have gone from a joke to a fantasy for audiences. Decades of stagnant wages and soaring home prices make Homer's cushy lifestyle achieved on the back of so little effort almost seem like a cruel joke today. This was touched upon in a 1997 episode, but the gulf has only widened in the quarter-century since. The 4-bedroom residence at 742 Evergreen Terrace is approximately 2,200 square feet. The property has a basement, attic, and generous front and back yards. The location of Springfield was deliberately vague for many years, but finally settled in 2007 with the release of the movie. Show creator Matt Groening presented Springfield, Oregon, with a plaque proclaiming it to be the real Springfield. An equivalent property in the real Springfield would fetch at least $400,000. Referred to Ranker.com.